Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I've got a beautiful feeling. We're going to talk about some weird shit today. Welcome to another episode of 21st Century Rocker Mom Podcast with me, your host, Tanya Candler, where we talk about the weird and wonderful, and we talk about it all. I'm here for it all. I'm here for everything. This week, I promised you something kind of, strange and out there, and we're going to talk about, serial killers and true crime and hauntings, and like I say, I'm here for all of it. And so are you, obviously, because I know you like the weird and wonderful. It was weird and wonderful this week. We ended up with snow a couple days, and now today it's like 18 degrees Celsius in Canadian. I don't know what that is in American, in Fahrenheit, but it's warm. It's nice and warm and sunny. So it's like the kids can go out and play and whatever. I can have a coffee. It's beautiful. It's been a weird week. I got lost in the car. I got lost. I didn't know where I was because my GPS system wouldn't connect with my car. So I was like, I have a natural sense for direction. I was by myself. So thank goodness that I didn't have anyone with me, but I got lost. It was fine. I found my way really quickly. I was like, oh, I know where I am all of a sudden. And I found my way and did what I needed to do. But this week has been seriously weird and wonderful. One day it was 24 degrees. It felt like summer. Everyone's got shorts on for one day, and the next day it's snowing. So that's weird and wonderful. So what else is weird and wonderful? I got to tell you. When you were a kid, did you take out those scary stories to tell in the dark books by Alvin Schwartz, and in a dark room, and that guy with the teeth, those scary books? Hello, Skelter. I don't ever know if you took those books out of the library, but I certainly did. And I was always a waiting list to take out Alvin Schwartz books because they came with either a record when I was a kid or a cassette tape. This is before we had the compact discs or the Blu-rays or anything like that, or anything digital whatsoever. Wait on a waiting list in the library to get these books out because they were so scary. And they had stories like The Big Toe and The Red Dot, where the girl had spiders hatch out of her face and scary shit like that. If you're wondering why I'm dressed so dapper today, it's because I'm dressed like I'm going to court like all these criminals did in my episode. If you remember back to the episode that I called Bloody Disgusting, I talked about so many barf-worthy memories, but I didn't talk a lot or a great deal about true crime and my fascination with the occult and paranormal and aliens and witches and astrology and things like that. Disturbing sort of things, as you get older, things like that. You're like, I'm going to watch something really nice and calm tonight. I'm going to calm down. And most of my friends are like, I'm going to have a glass of wine. I don't drink personally, alcohol. It's just not my jam. It'll blow my stomach up. I'm not there for it. I like coffee once in a while, not in the nighttime. In the nighttime, I drink a uncaffeinated tea. So I don't, I'm not up all night from caffeine or peeing my pants. So, the fascination with true crime, I don't know. You name a part of counterculture and I'm probably into it. But I wonder, I really wonder, and this is my question, almost of the week. Are we more fascinated with crime and scary stories and things like that, things that really creep us out? Are we more fascinated with this stuff when it's real and we know that these crimes and these stories have happened, these crimes have been committed, and that there are victims and there's names and faces attached to these crimes? Or are they scary because you read them in a book and the writer wrote them in such a way that they scare the shit out of you? So what's more scary, fact or fiction? I don't know. I'm going to let you be the judge this week on the show because that's what I'm talking about. So like I say, the votes are in. Morbid curiosity is out, and morbid curiosity is in. Everybody loves true crime. Everybody around my age group's yeah, I'm just gonna relax and put on the John Wayne Gacy documentary. We'll talk about that later, or they'll be oh, I'm just gonna sit down and read Helter Skelter. You know what I mean? It's the Manson family. I'm just gonna unwind with a good book about murder. But I mean, seriously, I want to talk to you about some weird crimes. Like, not ones just that you know about, but ones that maybe you don't know about. In July 20th in 2012, and this happened in Colorado, this man came into a movie theater, and it was a Batman movie. He came in fully dressed in tactical gear, and he unleashed tear gas on the audience. And then he proceeded, during a Batman premiere of a Batman movie, he called himself the Joker, this guy. He called himself the Joker. And with his tactical gear on, he unleashed this tear gas. And after the tear gas the audience, he just unleashed a barrage of bullets, like a shower of bullets upon the audience. Now, he killed 12 people. And the perpetrator, he's dressing in a bulletproof combat green gear. Obviously, he had a tear gas mask on because he had to be obviously like almost like immune to the tear gas he was like putting upon the audience. And he was stocked with enough ammo for, to blow up, the whole theater. But, when police apprehended him, it's just crazy because there's those cases that make your skin crawl. And this is one of them. Imagine just doing something mundane, like going to the movies to see a Batman movie. I mean, like, it's something that I would do. I mean, if there wasn't COVID all around right now, I'd go to the movies to see a Batman movie. But this happening, he referred to himself, like I say, as the Joker. He was super calm during his apprehension and arrest. And it led to police, because of his calm demeanor during his arrest, it led police to believe there was kind of more something more was going on. There was more to the story. So they investigated his apartment, and they found, upon entering his apartment, he had booby-trapped it with explosives. He had 30 homemade grenades that were underneath the sink, and he got charged with 24 counts of first-degree murder, 12 life sentences. His name was James Holmes. And that was one of the weird sort of, murderers that, those are something that you don't talk about every day. They're not like your regular Charles Manson and things like that. I switched to the iced coffee because it's gonna be May. And because, it's nice and warm outside. So why not have some iced coffee? It's good. Keeps you awake. It's good for you. Did you hear about the ghost train of Luna Park? Now, there was a ride at Luna Park in Australia called the Ghost Train. It was kind of like, it reminded me of the Ghoster Coaster if you've ever been to Canada's Wonderland. Something like this, almost like a rickety, wooden, creepy little roller coaster, but fun. But in 1979, Luna Park, Australia, amusement park, this roller coaster killed 6 young boys and a father when it spontaneously, I'm putting that in quotes, and it was initially deemed an accident, it spontaneously caught on fire during one of the rides. However, the park visitors were quick to share that they heard a group of teenage boys, kind of talking about using kerosene and matches. For 42 years, no one wanted to say anything. Some kid says that he spread out some kerosene, and another kid expresses that, they lit it on fire with matches and it may have been a mistake. But for some reason with this case, nobody, the people that witnessed it don't want to come out, and it's covered up for such a long time. Nobody wants to come out about it. The cops really sweep it under the rug with this one. There's a lot of police pressure to retract statements. It's really crazy. So a lot of people heard a lot of things. So I don't think that was an accident. With 26 witnesses and 26 statements of people that heard boys talking about using kerosene to light this roller coaster on fire, and the roller coaster operator himself saw these boys screwing around by the roller coaster in the amusement park right before this happened, before the ride commenced, and this ultimately led to the fatalities of these poor people. So I think that was no accident. But it's the ghost train of Luna Park. It's everyone thinks there's such a mystery behind it, but these people are crazy, and police turned a blind eye, and these people are living in fear, and there's so many cases that are hush hush, and that's why I want to talk about some cases that are hush hush, especially cases that got swept under the rug. For instance, the West Memphis 3. Of course, I want to talk to you about the West Memphis 3. West Memphis 3 is something I have obviously been, it involves children. So that's something that's very hard, because the graphic nature of the actual, like the subject matter and the case itself is a lot to handle. Like, I would not want to be someone on that jury, not as a mother, just like as a human being, like as a person. I just wouldn't want to. I've seen all the documentaries, I've seen everything, that I can. I've read every book, you know what I mean? I've read everything that I possibly can. The West Memphis 3, like I say, I've probably followed that case forever. I remember as a little kid, like this horrible thing happening and these young kids going to jail for like witchcraft or something. And I'm like, what is this about? So of course, as an adult, it strikes a chord in me. I can't sleep after I do research on it. I can't sleep after I read about it. I've seen all the docs, like I say. I followed the cases. I've read court cases. I've seen receipts. I've seen different things and different theories. I've seen different twists on the West Memphis 3 case. And I've kind of been an armchair detective about this. And it came at a price, though, as things often do. Vomiting, sleepless nights, panic attacks, all the fun things. But I do it for the pod. Being a parent, seeing the raw police footage that they put in the Paradise Lost documentaries that you may have seen on HBO, it's chilling. Just like as a parent, it's too much, and you feel for those like precious little kids who were obviously at the wrong place at the wrong time. And so that obviously, as a podcast host, and when you do research for your podcast and you rewatch things and you watch things, you watch things for leisure sometimes, and then you watch other things for research, and you really pick things out and you're really aware of them. And as a parent, it's really hard. And as part of my job, like obviously being a podcast host, that's my like least favorite part of my job, like probing around and poking around in things that are very trigger worthy. And that is, and it's not the best part of what I do, but like I say, I do it because I'm passionate. And this is one case that I felt was kind of like askew from day one. I'm like, something's not right here, because everything went so fast, and then they're so quick to accuse these 3 boys of murder, and it was crazy. So in 1993, I'm gonna read you what I wrote. In 1993, the murder of 3 precious little children rocked the small town of West Memphis, Arkansas. And it wasn't something that happened there. Like it wasn't. It was kind of like a Bible Belt sort of town. And murder didn't happen. It was a small town. Everybody knew everybody. But on May 6th, Stephen Brand, Christopher Byers, and Michael Moore kind of disappeared. They went off for a bike ride on their bikes on that evening, and they didn't return. The children were found without clothing on and murdered in the woods. The autopsy reports, they revealed extremely disturbing. I don't even know how to say this. I'm going to get Rob to cut this part out. The children were found naked and murdered in the woods, and the autopsy reports revealed extremely disturbing details leading up to their deaths and show that they were drowned to death. Like, I mean, these children, they were tortured. I am not going to go into specifics because I don't want to sit here and cry with you. I don't want to get sick. You can go out and watch these films on your own. You can read these books on your own. You can source this information out on your own. But I will tell you that it's beyond disturbing. And I'm going to give you probably my biggest trigger warning ever that I've given on the podcast, that if you see this, I'm going to give you this. Remember that I've handed out this warning that those documentaries and those books will display to you unimaginable cruelty and things that you wouldn't think of as a normal human being. Just unimaginable cruelty. And so after this happens with these children, automatically the authorities decide, because of the state of the remains of the victims, they decide that a cult ritual murder had kind of taken place. Police turn their attention automatically towards these 3 teenage boys, Jesse Muskelly, Jason Baldwin, and Damian Eccles, and they were dubbed the West Memphis 3, and they're charged kind of like almost like that snap with the murders. They kind of looked a little different. They listened to metal. Oh my God, they listened to metal. Oh, the horror, metal. For crying out loud, they listened to Metallica, wore black, grew their hair long. I think Damien Eccles took some Stephen King books out of the library. He was looking at books about the occult and stuff like that, but nothing to prove anything. So just because these kids looked a little different and they wore black, they get dubbed the murderers of these children. Like this gets me because these cases remind me of things like Sophie Lancaster, like people that get automatically labeled as something that they're not because of how they look. Subsequently, the trial focuses on, I'll get to Sophie Lancaster later and talk about her and her legacy kind of. The trial focuses on Damien Eccles' love of metal and the occult, and the jury concludes that it had to be a satanic ritual, and that's how these boys died. And they said that having Stephen King books in his possession and looking at things of the occult and looking at things that were derived from the occult proved that Damien Eccles was satanic, and the West Memphis 3 was dubbed. Done. So Damien Eccles actually spent 78 days on death row. He was sentenced to death row not once, not twice, but 3 times. That's a lot of times to be sentenced to death row. After the Paradise Lost documentary, though, like I say, I've seen it. And if you haven't seen it, I recommend you see it. But I say trigger warning, like don't have your kids around, for crying out Pete, don't. And like watch it when you're not on a full stomach and you feel like you're emotionally ready to watch and see something like that is very disturbing. But like after it came out, then came the questions and the doubts, and like Peter Jackson became friends with the West Memphis 3, and Johnny Depp started backing the boys in the West Memphis 3, saying, something is askew here, something's wrong with this trial. Like what's going on here? Why are these kids being sentenced to death? Like what did they do? So questions came up. Who actually took out these heinous acts on these poor little boys? Who actually did this? What was the motive? Like this watching the one stepdad, John Mark Byers, like in the documentary, like seen in the police footage and everything like that when he was younger, he seemed to be a total creeper and he seemed to be very suspect in the film. But then it ended in a very innocent sort of way, that he was an innocent guy and he didn't really do anything and he had concern for those kids. He was just kind of a really goofy kind of character. But then they were looking really closely at Terry Hobbs, who was Stevie Branch, one of the little kids who was murdered. He was a victim. He was Stephen Branch's stepdad. And David Jacoby, assisted by 2 teens, him, then, and like they say, Terry Hobbs, they thought maybe the 2 of them went out and were with the boys the night that they were murdered. And there's kind of testimony that, number one, Terry Hobbs was already sexually abusing Stevie Branch's little sister because he was his stepdad and he kind of came into the picture and married his mom, and there was sexual abuse there. So there's proof of that. And they also found a neighbor that saw Hobbs with the boys on the night of the actual murder. And there's I'm pretty sure there's stubs from a restaurant, like a little pay stub, to prove where kind of everyone was on the night of the murder. And there are so many eyewitness accounts that saw him doing laundry in the woods the night of Stevie's murder and all the other boys. And he had Stevie's pocket knife on him. And this little boy carried this pocket knife around, I guess, with him like it was his pride and joy and it was his favorite thing. And he always had it on him. And it turns out his stepdad had it in his possession, and they found it in the guy's, behind the guy's house, in a river or something. Very suspect. Why was this child's prized possession in this man's care? And he was, washing mud and blood off his clothes in the river the night of the murders. Why was he seen with the kids? We'll never know. So the West Memphis 3 was obviously let off after spending 20 years for a crime they didn't do, on death row. And now, obviously they're trying to be rehabilitated, and lots of people, like I say, are behind them and behind their story. I don't think they did it. I don't think they're going to get the people who did whatever happened to these boys. And I don't think they're going to get whomever did it until, like I say, and Damien Eccles has said it, and lots of other reporters have said it, and many people have said it, until they get the people out who of office or power that are kind of in charge of those things, nothing will change. So, there you go. So hopefully they find out who actually did this before these people or this person or these persons like pass away, and there's some justice for these little kids, because everything just looks suspect there. And speaking of little kids, we want to talk about clowns, because fuck clowns. Clowns are scary. I don't even know any little kids that like clowns. You know that? No. I'm going to talk about who else but Pogo the Clown, who also called himself Patches the Clown, John Wayne Gacy, this son of a bitch. This guy was fucking crazy. He's one crazy fucking killer clown from hell. John Wayne Gacy. What can I say about John Wayne Gacy? He was responsible for the rape and torture and murder of at least that we know of, 33 and counting young men and boys. And to many, he was just a guy who dressed up as a clown and entertained children and liked to entertain children. He played a big part in his community. He looked like some Brezhnev that you'd sit beside in church. Something about his really cold, he had those shark eyes like a lot of serial killers have. There's nothing there. Their eyes are just dead because there's nothing inside, right? And so John Wayne Gacy, he was a chilling killer in Chicago in the 1970s, and he terrorized men. He absolutely terrorized them, picking them up off the street. And he was a fairly successful handyman. He had a business, he was running it, he was married, he had a house there in Chicago, Illinois. And in 1978, after a boy named Robert Piest, in 1978, after a boy named Robert Piest kind of went missing, he was reported missing because his mom came to his work, he wasn't there. He kind of never went anywhere. He was a young boy, he's 15 years old. They discovered the last person he was talking to was John Wayne Gacy. He was going to give him a job with his handyman business. Robert Piest was never heard from again. So at this time, police obtained a search warrant to see John Wayne Gacy's home. And there had been a smell underneath his house and by his house that had been there for quite some time. He told his wife that it was something like mold. He equated it to mold and something building up in the house and whatever, and she never thought anything of it. After the search warrant was kind of executed, they found the bodies of 29 young men, or boys, I guess, in John Wayne Gacy's house. And he tried to do the insanity plea with the whole I'm schizophrenic thing. That was rejected. He was sentenced to lethal injection in 1994, but I will say that was too kind for what he did. That lethal injection, they just put you to sleep with some needles and your heart stops. He got put to sleep like an animal. Well, he was a fucking animal, but really that was too good for John Wayne Gacy. He was sentenced to death, like I say, but you should see the documentary on Netflix. Conversations with a Killer. It's the doc on Netflix. It's the John Wayne Gacy tapes. The guy, for someone who killed with such tenacity and absolutely no feeling for it, I feel like getting put to sleep with a needle is kind of way too kind for someone like that. For the things he did horrible things. And like I say, he terrorized men and boys for a long time. And so John Wayne Gacy, definitely Pogo the Clown, one of the bad ones. Another one you might know about or you might not know about is the Mansons. Helter Skelter. Do you want me to love you? Do you don't me? Okay, I'm going to do that again. And another crime that you might know about or you might not know about is the Manson and the Manson family, Charles Manson, the Manson murders. And don't you want me to love you? I'm coming down fast, but I'm miles above you. Helter Skelter, Helter Skelter. I forgot my guitar, but seriously, I remember turning on the White Album and listening to Helter Skelter, but when that song came on, I turned it down because I wouldn't want my mom to hear me listening to this satanic music, because I knew that it had a connotation with the Manson family, because Helter Skelter, right? If you know anything about Charlie Manson, like, you know, was he a serial killer? He's a cult leader. He's a misunderstood songwriter. He's a friend to the Beach Boys. What? Who? Charlie Manson? Yeah, Charles Manson. Terry Melcher, who is Doris Day's son, another famous producer, as well as Brian Wilson, became entangled with Charles Manson. Charles Manson, when he got to sunny California in the late 1960s, he was kind of hopeful that he'd be picked up by a label, like a music label. And he was quite a skilled musician because he kind of learned it in prison. He was fresh out of a 7-year stint in jail for, I think, robbery and like breaking in and stuff like that. And he'd come from a family that was kind of about robbery and breaking in. He'd been bounced around from home to home after his mother had been thrown in jail when he was young for the same kind of thing. He impressed producers like I say, Terry Melcher, Brian Wilson, musicians like Neil Young. Manson even recorded at Gold Star Studios in Hollywood, which is somewhere that Brian Wilson recorded, which is somewhere that, well, Phil Spector recorded, you know, and Philly's Records, like Raw Nets, like big bands recorded there. And he recorded like a demo sort of tape there, like an acetate. And he ended up recording like an album. It's weird. But, it was more of a, like I say, it's a demo, and it's a mishmash of songs. Like, and when I say mishmash, I mean mishmash. It's weird. But some even later got recorded by the Beach Boys. You can see that on some of their albums. Dennis Wilson actually got kind of intertwined, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, with the Manson family. And he ended up, you know, pushing, when Brian Wilson so much wasn't in the picture with the Beach Boys. Weird, because I talked about Brian Wilson on the last episode. When Brian Wilson kind of lost power with the Beach Boys and he was in bed and kind of high all the time, Dennis Wilson kind of inserted Charles Manson's songs into the band and thought, you know, this would be great. And so they recorded them. However, the Beach Boys connection, after we'll get to that later. The other folks that primarily followed Manson, you know, especially after his music seemed to be largely rejected, were women. He wanted men to follow him, but largely who followed him were women. And a large building block in what we now know as the Manson family was kind of made. And the first women indoctrinated kind of here were Susan Adkins, Leslie Van Hooden, and Patricia Crenwinkel. And everyone knows them from all the court pictures where they've got different things painted on their heads, and they've shaved their heads for Charles Manson. They've done whatever, because he had this kind of cult following, and they lived, you know, on a ranch down in Death Valley, and they dropped acid together and had visions, and he told them of things, and they saw him as sort of a prophet, which is kind of crazy, almost a Jesus-like figure. And I think he portrayed himself as such, you know, with the guitar and, oh, I'm very peaceful and I've just got this following. But meanwhile, he's like having sex with all these women, and it's not a good scene, you know. August 9th, 1969 rolls around, and oh my gosh. The murders of 8 people, including 8-month pregnant actress Sharon Tate, the wife of director Roman Polanski. Of course, put Roman Polanski in there. Wojtek Frykowski, Stephen Perrin, who was only 18, and who at the time he was visiting the house. Wrong place, wrong time. Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, who is obviously the heiress to Folger's Coffee Company. I'm not drinking Folger's coffee right now. I'm drinking Bones. But the next night, Rosemary and Lino LaBianca were stabbed to death in Los Feliz. Manson hadn't lifted a finger, you know. Police found a chilling scene in both cases that they displayed in these murders. They thought that they were done very angrily by the way these murders were displayed. They're ritualistic, satanistic, you know, blood on the walls, different words. You know, you've read Helter, Skelter. You've seen it with the, you know, piggies on the wall, pigs, Helter, Skelter. Manson adopted the Beatles, you know, the Beatles... he coined the term Helter Skelter himself, even though it had nothing to do with murder. The Beatles had nothing to do with Charles Manson. He just was obsessed with the Beatles and talked about the term Helter Skelter a lot, which actually had to do with race wars. The Beatles were equating to race wars and what was going on at the time with race. But Manson had it there, and he directed his followers to do it. But I mean, how bad can you be murdering a pregnant person? Holy smokes. I can't believe it. But Manson never lifted a finger. That's the thing. One of his heavy lifters, Tex Watson, and he was one of the heavy lifters at the ranch, or the Manson family ranch, or whatever they called it in Death Valley. He took out a lot of people, as long with, like I say, like Leslie Van Houten and Patricia Crenwinkel and Susan Adkins and people that were in the Manson family. He kind of directed them in this movie, you know, he kind of made himself to kill these people. And they did exactly what he wanted. And they were stabbed angrily in a way. And the killings were made actually for Terry Melcher, but they thought where Terry Melcher was, it was Sharon Tate's house, where Roman Polanski's house was. Roman Polanski was away doing a film, I believe. And the murder intended for Terry Melcher, who wasn't there, ended up on them. And I don't know, I think he wanted to murder Terry Melcher because, my theory is because he didn't want to produce any of his albums. And anyways, he directed the whole production. So like, as everyone says, like, what did Charles Manson do? So what did he do? If he wasn't there at the murders, like, why did he end up dying in jail at, 83 years old? You know, why did he die in jail? What did he do if he didn't lift a finger? What he did was he directed the whole production. He instructed them to carry out these acts, and he was like I say, he was a seed planter, like most cult leaders are. Then you plant the seed, the tree grows, and pff, there you go. He had a really big IQ. Like he had an above average IQ. I think it was 109. I say he was sentenced to life in prison. He died in prison in California at 83 years old. Like, how do you believe that? So there you go. I promised a few people that I would talk about Richard Ramirez, because I've been talking about him. What a sick son of a bitch. He's like maybe not one people know about, the Night Stalker. Not people don't know about him as much as other serial killers perhaps, but he terrorized LA and San Francisco in the 1980s. He was absolutely insane, like what he did. He was quietly tiptoeing into people's homes and murdering and sexually assaulting and abducting people. And he was really, if you can think about it, he was the real life boogeyman. He was coming into people's homes and assaulting them, like coming through open windows or open sliding glass doors in the back, or, you know, the door by the pool, or if a bathroom window was left open, it was an opportunity, or a cat or a dog door. It was an opportunity for him to get in the house. And he was angrily murdering these people. And it's like something with the anger and these people. I don't understand what it is. He was a Satanist. He eluded police for a long time. He had so many victims. He eluded police so many times, but like subsequently killing so many victims in between eluding police, they couldn't catch him. For so long, he was a self-proclaimed Satanist. He had devil tattoos on his hands. He was responsible for some of the most vicious and savage crimes from serial killers in American history. And he might not be, your Ted Bundy or your Jeffrey Dahmer, but Richard Ramirez terrified a nation when they finally found out who he was. 25-year-old Richard Ramirez, he was 25 years old, sorry. He was only 25 years old when he was actually charged with all these murders. And there were a lot of murders by the mid-1980s. He had been breaking into a lot of houses and, for the most part, murdering people or sexually assaulting them, but leaving behind like footprints and things like that, like things to get himself, like physical DNA to get himself busted, but the police couldn't catch him. He was born in 1960. He didn't have a pleasant childhood growing up. He was raised primarily by a babysitter. He messed around with his brothers and sisters. His brother was sniffing glue. He did have one cousin he idolized, hung around with him a lot growing up, and then his cousin got back from Vietnam. And he was telling Richard Ramirez all these stories from Vietnam, which were probably not age appropriate. And he had all these Polaroids of things he had done, heinous things that he had done or claimed that he had done in Vietnam. And he was showing Richard Ramirez all these things. And so he became really impressionable to that. And Richard Ramirez saw some really disturbing Polaroids of things that happened in the Vietnam War. And then his cousin taught Richard Ramirez like tactical skills. He wanted him to know how to fight, and he wanted him to know how to kill. And even his cousin's like wife was kind of concerned about how much time the cousin was spending with Richard and teaching him these skills. And Ramirez his cousin didn't care. His wife and him kept getting in an argument about it. And essentially, Richard Ramirez saw his cousin murder his cousin's, like his own wife, in front of him. He just shot her with a gun. And Richard Ramirez said at that point, it was crazy. He said that he became obsessed with crime and murders and killers and death. He was getting high a lot on cocaine. His dad left him in a cemetery overnight, tied to a tree. So that is enough to, I think, ruin anyone's psychological self, probably. That's not good for you. So in 1978, he did a string of burglaries in LA because he was gone. He was done. He left where he was born in 1978. He didn't want to be where he was. So he was born in Texas. So he wanted to leave Texas. He headed for California in 1978. And he, like I say, went on a string of cocaine binges, burglaries, and terrorized LA then. But in 1982, he was arrested for grand theft auto. He was kind of living out of the Cecil Hotel and a few other hotels that were a bit seedy. We'll get to the Cecil Hotel later when we talk about haunted hotels and haunted places. Haunted by what? We'll find out. Oh, but his murder started really in 1984, and they found this out later, of a 9-year-old girl. It prompted other murders. He stabbed a 79-year-old woman for no reason, a few weeks later, just because her window was open. Her son called the police. The police did nothing. He kind of slipped deep into his addiction with cocaine, and he started stealing cars. But then he said his appetite for murder and being a killer really grew, and he wanted to kind of focus in on that. And in 9 months, or less than 9 months, I think he killed more than 14 people. And this didn't stop with the assault. He was assaulting women when he was breaking into these houses. He was also abducting children at this time and assaulting them, but then leaving them places abandoned. So they have to call their parents in 911. Not killing any of the children, but assaulting them and keeping them prisoner. There was something wrong with this guy. This guy was one sick son of a fucking bitch. He was a son of a bitch. But oh my God. Once the press, though, I will tell you this. Once the press put his fucking face out there, they got him the next day. They got Richard Ramirez. They had him on death row. But in 2013, he died of lymphoma. He got married in jail. But everyone will say, with all the interviews he had, and you can see it on court tapes and anything, he had no remorse. He had no feelings. He had nothing, no emotion towards any of the killings whatsoever. He didn't care. He loved the spotlight. He loved to be the celebrity. He dressed up for court every day. He was wearing sunglasses in court. He did his hair. He was wearing different outfits. Like I say, that's why I'm dressed up for court. It was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. It was a shit show. Now, this brings up a really interesting question. Was he born a killer, or was he made a killer? And most of these guys, and women too, there are so many different people that they kill. Is it nature or nurture with killing and true crime and things like this? Is there a recipe to this kind of thing? Is it 50% sustained abuse? Because they say that a lot of children who have sustained abuse end up in these happenings and end up in these situations. Children that have had abuse or been neglected and things like that. And then some is from, extreme mental illness. Some of it is just, there's no rhyme or reason for it at all. Some of it is just, being a social pariah. And, I said I was going to speak of social pariahs, and some people are just outcasted and don't do anything at all. And they don't become serial killers. They're just outcasted because of the way they look, or the way they dress, or the way they talk, or, the music they listen to, or whatever it is. Someone's judgy and they outcast them. Some cases, in extreme cases, it gets bad. And something I did say I was going to touch on is Sophie Lancaster case. And Sophie Lancaster case is something where people, like I say, judge a book by its cover. And Sophie Lancaster looked a lot like I did back in the day. She was murdered in England in August 2007. And the case went viral around the world with her mom. She and her boyfriend were kind of attacked by a group of teenage boys. 5 boys attacked her and her boyfriend. When they were beating on her boyfriend, they turned their attention towards her and they beat her to death, essentially. And she spent 13 days on life support. And the doctors advised her family that she should be taken off life support, and they agreed. And at 20 years old, she passed away. That's ridiculous. So I don't understand like why the name calling and why the ostracizing and why the judgment and why the outcasting, and like it just leads me to like more points that these sort of things get like romanticized. They're not romantic, they're not pretty, it's not nice. There's nothing like, especially there's nothing haunted about this. These things are not a romantic thing. They're human tragedies. Sophie's mom, Sylvia Lancaster, who actually started the Sophie Lancaster Foundation, you can find it on Instagram. I follow it on Instagram. You can find it on Twitter. You can find it on like SophieLancasterFoundation.com. It's still going, but her mom passed away recently, and she was really petitioning for her daughter and everyone who looked alternative, and it was really kind of cool. You know what I mean? And to hear that she passed away was really sad as well. But to hear like a 20-year-old girl lose her life because she got beaten to death by boys because she looked different is kind of ridiculous. You know, it's sad because, you know what I mean? I grew up looking different too. And I grew up taking like absolute shit for like looking different. Like having pink hair, people didn't like that. People didn't respect that. And they let me know about it. Or, you know, wearing a tiara to school. People didn't like that. They let me know about it. You know, they'd call me a name or, you know, whatever they wanted to do. No skin off my banana. You know what I mean? I don't give a shit. Call me whatever you want. I don't care. I'm just glad I never got into any physical fights and there's never any altercations. There are some close calls, but there were not too many, you know, altercations. Lots of mouthy stuff, you know what I mean? And speaking of things that were not romantic, just lost souls, not haunted, just lost souls. We're going to talk about the Cecil Hotel, which I said Richard Ramirez actually spent a lot of time living at the Cecil Hotel. There were just rooms kind of cleaner than the embassy, like in London, Ontario, that burned down. And you know, and the Cecil Hotel was just a place where people could crash, and people romanticize it as this like haunted place where all these bad things happen, when it was really just full of people that had kind of lost their way, or they were on the way in and out of prison. They were kind of transient. They were addicted to drugs, or, you know, there's a lot of mental health issues going on. There's a lot of sex workers, and they really had nowhere else to go. So they went to the Cecil Hotel. The rooms were clean enough that they could just stay there for a time, and they could pay by the day or the week or the month, and it was convenient for them. And people romanticized it as this haunted hotel because, you know, they saw the girl get murdered in the elevator video and the water tower, and it's so scary. And she's standing in the elevator and she's looking at something, and they've made it haunted, and, you know, they tried to scare the shit out of you on Netflix, but it's really not a romantic story. It's really not a haunted story. It's really nothing like Dark Water or anything like that horrible movie with Jennifer Connelly. I'm just going to say it. That movie's fucking terrible. The Cecil Hotel is not, you know, the water tower thing. It's not haunted. You want to know a real haunted tower? You talk to me about the Hollywood haunted Hollywood Tower of Terror in not even California. I don't even know if there's one in California, but there's one in Florida. And I know about it because I've been on it and I got my brain scrambled on it. Imagine. You're going up this elevator, and I'm going up with my kid, and he's young at the time. He just looks at me and he goes, "Mom, but what?" He goes, "You're screwed," because he'd already been on it. He and Rob went on it. And I thought, oh, they're fine. His height was fine, and other kids were going on it. So I thought absolutely nothing of it. So I'm like, I'll do it with you. And I saw people getting dropped and everything. I'm like, what's the big deal? Oh my gosh. I felt like I had a hangover for like forever. My neck was done. I was finished on the Hollywood Tower of Terror. And when your 5-year-old says to you, "Mom, you're screwed." Yeah, exactly. So, and even everybody on the ride like laughed. And this was like pre-COVID. So like everyone was killing themselves laughing. And I was screaming the whole way down because you get dropped out a window. They take you up this ride and you go into this part where everything blacks out and it's just like black stars all around you. And I think it's kind of supposed to be like a sensory deprivation experience. So you don't know where you're going. All of a sudden, the doors open and bang, they drop you out a window. Oh my God, it's the scariest bullshit you've ever seen that you've ever seen in your life. I'm telling you. That's a real haunted hotel. You know, remember at the beginning of the show, I was talking about scary stories to tell in the dark, and I was saying how you couldn't get out of the library. And all the kids want to read that book. And all the sequels too. Alvin Schwartz was the man. He was everything for writing scary stories for a kid. He was our Stephen King growing up. What about a scary stories to tell in the dark for grown-ups? What about that? What do you think about a scary stories to tell in the dark for grown-ups? I still cannot reveal my crafty collaborator, but I will tell you this. When two hot goth chicks put their brains together, some crazy shit happens. And that's what's going to happen. So we got something to be afraid of from the two of us. You got something extra kind of spooky to look forward to. And I'm looking at like a Halloween sort of time frame. So you got something scary coming down the pipe. Like as if true crime wasn't scary enough. Now let me ask you this. Like I say, is true crime scary because it actually happened and it could happen to you? It might be someone who lives next door to you. Maybe he lives next door to you. But seriously, someone could live next door to you and they could be absolutely bananas. How do you know? You don't. It's crazy. But I'm saying it could be absolutely nuts. But I'm saying, what's scarier? Is it something that you've written in a book, you've written down? Is it a story that you made up in your head? Or is it things that have happened in real life? Is it things that have gotten twisted, that have gotten passed down through generations and the story's changed a little bit? Like what freaks the shit out of you? What freaks you out? What gives you shivers in your nightshirt? Because, you know what I mean? This is the shivers in the nightshirt episode. Like I say, you got to see some of these documentaries and watch these movies and read these books. If you like true crime, and I know you do, because obviously you're listening to this episode and you wanted to listen to this sick shit about bodies being found under people's houses and fucking people being murdered. You know, I mean, a lot of people really like to relax and watch a nice true crime documentary anytime. I know I'm doing true crime books right now, and people really appreciate the genre that is true crime because it's true. And they want to hear people stories. They want to hear stories about the people. That said, speaking of stories of the people, I'm going to talk about stories of the people that are musicians because I had such a good response, an overwhelming response from the Brian Wilson episode. I asked about Tanya Candler's School of Spin, a show maybe once a month where I interact with you live. I take questions. We chat about an album. I spin it live with you. We talk about the album. I talk about the album. I answer your questions back and forth. You maybe give me questions. I answer them back and forth. We chat about it live once a month. We pick a record together. You guys gave it a thumbs up. Woo, let's do it. And so I said, you know what? Let's do it. So let's spin an album every month together. Let's get that together. Some scary things are coming down the pipe. Like I said, Halloweeners, get ready. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. I would encourage you. It's going to be beautiful for a while, I think. I checked my phone. It's going to be beautiful outside. I would encourage you to get outside, get some fresh air, fill your lungs, do some gardening, do whatever, makes you feel better. I told you I would reveal what my injury was. Oh my goodness. So while I was chopping the bushes with those giant scissors that you may have seen on my Instagram, I pulled a muscle in my shoulders and my trapezius in my back while I was trimming and pruning bushes, which is so embarrassing. And so I thought immediately that I was dying and that I was having a heart attack. It turns out that I wasn't. Pulled the trapezius muscle, made the whole left arm hurt and everything down to the fingers. Not fun. Scary, man. I was like taking aspirin like it was Skittles. I was like, what is going on? Oh my God, I'm dying. And turns out I'm not. Thank goodness. Let's go. No more dying. No, we can't do that. So like I say, it's a beautiful day. Get outside. I want you to enjoy this day. I'm going to drop my socials for you right now because in case you don't know where I am, I'm on Instagram at 21st Century Rocker Mom. all the time. I'm rocking it there. You got me on YouTube at Tanny Candler channel. Just click subscribe and then you'll know exactly where I am. I'm on Twitter at Tanny Candler. I'm TikToking it up sometimes on TikTok at 21st Century Rocker Mom. Otherwise, I'm right here on 21st Century Rocker Mom, wherever you stream your podcasts. And again, like I say, you can watch me on YouTube. It's fun. Whatever you like, whatever floats your boat, whatever tickles your pickle, whatever peels your banana. We will see you. I will see you next week for another episode of 21st Century Rocker Mom with me, your host, Tanny Candler, right here. All right. Have a wonderful day. I love ya. I'm rooting for you. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful week ahead of you. And I'll see you back here, like I say, next week on the podcast.